All right, back now here at the KFYR Plus news desk, and President Trump said recently that I am not joking about trying to serve a third term, the clearest indication he is considering ways to maybe breach the Constitution barrier against continuing to lead the country after his second term ends at the beginning of 2029. Joining me back here on the desk is our legal expert, Jeremy Rosenthal. Welcome back to the program, Mr. Rosenthal.
Jay, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you for asking. Well, Jeremy, this all might be moot if this current administration continues down the path of tariffs and losing a lot of money. But nonetheless, we've got you on here. There's a few things I'd like to talk to you about. What legal avenues, if any, could President Trump potentially explore to seek that third term? Is it crazy talk, or could it actually happen?
It's crazy talk, and there's not a lot of legal avenues for something like this to happen. Um, there's just a lot of walls, and there's no route to a legitimate third term for Donald Trump without somebody handing the presidency to him, or without some type of really odd um, end around or something like that. We start with the basic framework, and it's an interesting academic question, if
Uh-huh.
nothing else. But we start with the basic framework. The 22nd Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says that you cannot be elected more than twice to the presidency. That doesn't mean consecutively. It just means twice overall. Uh, and by any objective measure, the Electoral College has certified Donald Trump twice in his lifetime as the elected president of the United States. So the 22nd Amendment would bar him winning in his own right. You look at different avenues, and that even there is kind of frustrating. You've got the 12th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. If you're thinking, well, J.D. Vance is going to run, and
Mm-hmm.
then J.D. Vance will step aside so that Donald Trump can be the president. Um, First off, I think asking anybody to step aside from the presidency, no matter how much you trust them or think that they're going to do that, I think when you're given the keys to the Oval Office, you're given the nuclear codes. I think you kind of get used to people laughing at your jokes, and you kind of might want to stick around for a minute.
Yeah.
Because what's in it for JD Vance, right? Well, I'll make you the Secretary of Defense. Okay, so if I quit the presidency, you'll make me the Secretary of Defense. And then one day, maybe what can I be? The president? Well, I'm already the president, right? So if we put that type of dynamic aside, the 12th Amendment says that you cannot run and you cannot be the vice president if you are ineligible to be the president. So that would act potentially as a bar. The only legitimate ways that you could do this are if you were to somehow either be the Speaker of the House, which Trump could do, the Speaker does not have to be a member, or a cabinet member, and there were appropriate succession. So one alternative could be Donald Trump becomes the Speaker of the House. President Donald Trump Jr. Resigns. Eric Trump, who's the Vice President, also resigns. And then Donald Trump is elevated for his third term. I mean, we could do like an X's and O's on a whiteboard,
Yeah.
but that's literally what it's coming down to.
Yeah. That's kind of wild. What does this situation reflect to the state of democracy in this country?
Well, the fact that if anybody supports that and isn't immediately shutting it down, it says that Donald Trump's got a lot of support, and even to the point where he can just sort of say, "Well, this Constitution doesn't work for me, and I'm going to find a way around it," and people are okay with that. It shows a lot about his support, and maybe that's what democracy is, right? Maybe if the voters are behind somebody to such a degree. Um, then we get what's there.
But what does this do to the Republican Party and its future candidates?
You would think that it probably is hamstringing a little bit. That they would want to have somebody that they can fully sort of get behind and not have this sort of twisted plot, if you will, to do. You would think that it would probably be preferable for them to have somebody that they can just simply all get behind. That they
Hmm.
can all maybe in 2028 get behind JD Vance if he is the nominee, or if another person wants to run for it. You would think that they don't sort of need this specter if you will, in the background, trying to sort of have it their own individual way, especially when that path is so muddy and so murky and really just so inconceivable.
Let me put this scenario out to you, Jeremy. We know that Mr. Trump, President Trump, has quite a following, right? I mean, he's had it since 2016. The guy is Teflon Don. Okay, let me just say that so now he can't run. Here's what he's going to do. This is just off the top of my head. J.D. Vance rises to the presidency, or at least he's going to run for president. Mr. Trump will then be his vice president, but he will go barnstorming, because there's one thing that man loves to do is barnstorming across the country and talk to people, right? That's what he loves this job for. He will, in not so many terms, probably say, hey, vote for JD, but it's going to be me. It's going to be big guy here that's going to be pulling the strings. JD will be in the office, but I'm going to be the guy behind it. Can you see something like that happening? I know that you said, JD's going to win the office, but he probably, not going to give it up, but he's going to get the office just
Right.
behind Trump pushing it.
Yeah, so when we look at the 12th Amendment, and these are and words are very, very critical, obviously, in the legal profession and lawyering and all these things. The 12th Amendment says that no person who is ineligible to be the president can be the vice president or run for
Gotcha.
vice president. Donald
Okay.
Trump is, and this is here's a very key distinction. Donald Trump is ineligible to be elected president of the United States for a third term. I don't know that he is ineligible to serve as president of the United States for a third term. Now, there's no avenue to a fourth term, just simply none, because the vice president is limited. If the vice president serves more than 2 years of the existing term, they're only eligible for election one time. So, to put it to you like this, if Donald Trump were to step aside or something were to happen, if J.D. Vance were to assume the presidency today, J.D. Vance would be eligible for election in 2028, but ineligible in 2032. If Donald Trump on, say, January the 21st of, what would it be, 2027, if that were the day that Donald Trump were left office and J.D. Vance assumed it, he would then be eligible for 2028 and 2032. But if Donald Trump were to serve more than 2 years of a vice presidential term, there's no avenue there either. And again, I mean, the man's 80 something years old, and
Right.
I don't see this happening. But maybe in 3 or 4 years after a second term of this, maybe he's done with it. I mean, the White House tends to age people, I think, disproportionately. So,
Yeah.
so we don't know that. But if he were to do that and say, ladies and gentlemen, yes, it's going to be President Vance, but I'm the puppet master. If you're going to vote for that, then maybe that works. If folks are going to believe that and vote for it, then there's no bar that I can see to him trying to do it that way.
What are the risks to our democratic institutions if something like that were to happen?
The real risk is obviously, I mean, look, if there are the legal pathways, and then there's the pathways where we all kind of have to shut our ears and shut our eyes and just pretend that it's legal. That's the real damage, right?
Yeah.
That's the real harm here that can happen, because the Constitution has to mean something. And we didn't put these things in place for them to be run around. We all agree, and it's extremely hard to amend the Constitution. You would think that in, I believe it would be 1950, 1952, whenever it was that they passed the 22nd Amendment, that's hard. That required 2/3 of Congress, that required 2/3 of Senate, and that required 3/4 of the states to agree that we should never have a president in office more than 8 years, fundamentally. And we learned a lesson, and whatever you thought about FDR, this all came because people didn't want to have a 4-term president again. And history has to teach us these things, and just because I wasn't alive in 1950, and Jay, you look, you're very wise and sage. I don't know that you were around in 1952 either, uh, but we ought to take we ought to take to heart what history has taught um, our country, and it's the law. So I think it's very troubling. I think it's very troubling to try to say, well, the Constitution really doesn't mean that, and we can sort of we can get around it. um, that's talk that is, that can erode our faith in our national institutions.
Sure. Since a lot of our conversation we're talking hypothetically, let me throw this at you. We've got Mr. Trump in 29 running. What about Barack Obama says, you know what? Hey, I got nothing else going on. Kids are out of the house. Why not throw my hat back in the ring? Is that a possibility too?
Well, if we're talking theoretically, if it's the same, it depends on the loophole that Donald Trump decides to try to jump through, right? And if what's good for the goose is good for the gander, then yes, you could see a similar matchup, I suppose. I know that there was a motion or a bill that was proposed in the House. I don't think it's going to go very far,
Mm-hmm.
to amend the Constitution to allow for non-consecutive terms. In other words, it would be for Donald Trump, but not for Barack Obama. I'm sure that's part of the intent.
Yeah.
But if something like that were to happen, then you could see where the loophole would be good for one, but not the other. But again, you're there. I mean, look, we're talking about a Congress that can't decide when to take a bathroom break. So they're certainly not going to have the votes to amend the U.S. Constitution in that fashion. But yeah, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Jeremy, I would love to see that, wouldn't you? That matchup between Obama and Trump. Those two, the reason it might have all started because of the White House Correspondents' Dinner with, and then him calling he's a
Yeah.
birther, blah, 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 that whole thing going back and forth. That's my dream matchup right there. It really is. Okay. How should the legal community and the public respond to such statements as this? Should we, like you say, just poo poo it like, come on, Donald, you're blowing smoke, pal?
I, I mean, I think that it's really. I think what we have to do is pay attention to the people, and I think what folks have to do is pay attention to the voters. That's going to decide how much steam this gets. If to use again a historical example, and to go back to FDR again, not being alive in the 1930s and the 1940s. Um, from what I've read in history, FDR was wildly popular, and one of the things that really hit a wall for him in his presidency was when he decided that he was going to pack the U.S. Supreme Court. And then politically, that really, really backfired on him, and
Mm-hmm.
he lost a lot of support. He lost a lot of ground for wanting to do something that so fundamentally restructures our government. Um, if Donald Trump is perhaps putting his thumb in the wind and licking it and seeing which way the wind is blowing, if he's doing something like that, then he may be looking to see what voters are saying and what their reactions are, and to see, all right, am I going to get a lot of blowback in the Senate for this? Are some of my most ardent supporters in the U.S. Senate, is Ted Cruz going to get any pushback from this? Let's hear what the constituents are telling Ted Cruz. And if everybody thinks that this is a great idea, then I don't know that there's a lot to dissuade him.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I think that that's probably part of the equation here, is for him to just sort of gauge overall popularity. But I think that there's no way, there's no other way to take him literally now, and to sort of talk a little more politically here. When you talk to progressives, when you talk to liberals, one of their greatest fears is that Donald Trump never wants to leave. They would say, look, we saw this once already. We saw this on January the 6th.
Mm-hmm.
He's got this fascination, this obsession with power. He's got this. He talks a lot about dictators, and we think that he idolizes a lot of those types of people. And so, of course, he's going to say that he wants to stick around in the third term, and of course, he means it. So it doesn't give, I think, a lot of his opponents warm fuzzies when he says things like this. Now,
Right.
on the flip side, Donald Trump also has been, he also has been known to a sort of play a little
Push
rope-a-dope,
buttons.
right? He
Yeah.
sort of will kind of draw the opposition off sides, and so maybe this is rhetoric. Maybe this is something that's designed to kind of get his base excited. Uh, we won't know until we know.
Yeah, I mean, if not for nothing, Mr. Trump is he's not much of a policymaker, but boy, he does know how to play the game. I mean, he's the Donald man. He knows what he's doing. Okay, Jeremy, I've got just a couple more minutes with you, and I know that you've
Yeah.
got a little bit of experience on this because you talked about it on another station. So I'd like to get your thoughts. Supreme Court has ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the return of a mistakenly deported Maryland man. What's the very latest on that?
Right. So the U.S. Supreme, so the district court. So think about it like this: you've got the district court, which is the entry level courts, and then you have the intermediate courts, and then you've got the U.S. Supreme Court. The lowest court, still a federal district judge, still has a lot of stick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that judge ordered the Trump administration. So the Trump administration has conceded that this man was deported in error. So we know, and my understanding is that this person is a gang member or a probable gang member. That our government knows this, but that his life would be threatened if sent to El Salvador. So a federal immigration judge, I think in 2019, said, "Okay, you can't deport this guy to El Salvador. They're going to kill him. We can't do that." Uh, we deported him there anyway, and the Trump administration says, "Our bad. We're sorry, but." We don't have him. He's not in our hands at the moment, so we're
Mm-hmm.
powerless to try to get him. We can negotiate for him. The district judge set that deadline and said, by midnight, you're going to have this guy back to me. Trump appealed it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court agreed with him and said, look, yeah, now that this guy's out of our hands, we can't do a deadline here. And I believe either yesterday or today, the U.S. Supreme Court came back and said basically in a 9-0 opinion, said the U.S. has to get this guy back.
Mm-hmm.
That this was a mistake, and that the executive branch is ordered to get this guy back. But as far as the courts go, we can't tell you how to do it, and we can't put a deadline on you to do it. That's where it currently stands. So the judiciary has given them a general order to do this, really giving it back to that low level judge to figure out the who, when, what, where, why, and how of it.
And Jeremy, why didn't Mr. Garcia receive due process?
I don't know. He certainly should have. I don't believe he was deported pursuant to the Aliens Enemies Act, but there's a number of people that were deported pursuant to that. When you read the actual act from 1798, there's two parts to it. One part very clearly says that when we're at a time of war with a foreign government, that the president does have extraordinary authority to take this type of unilateral action.
Mm-hmm.
The second part of it says that it's the courts to figure it out, how to administer it, and that you do get due process. And on top of that, the Constitution says if you are a person on our soil, you get due process. And I think the courts have come back and say, yeah, we're going to talk about whether or not you can use this act, but everybody gets due process. So I don't, that would be for the executive to explain why these people were not afforded due process. I'm curious to hear why they thought it was okay.
In the argument in front of the Supreme Court yesterday, Trump administration lawyers had said they can seize any citizen. So what is stopping this administration from grabbing you and I that may disagree with this administration?
I don't know. That's the part of it that I think is most discomforting,
Mm-hmm.
which is that it is we don't like anywhere in this country, whether it be the judiciary, whether it be police or law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like a lack of oversight. Nobody in this country gets to grade their own paper. Nobody, and even a corporate CEO has a board that grades their paper. They have investors that grade their paper. Everybody has. There's a check and balance everywhere, all the way up to the executive branch. So when the executive branch has a situation where they claim there's no oversight, as Americans, it tends to unnerve us.
Yeah, I think there's a faction of people in this country that think, okay, he's here on a green card. Does he deserve some process? Yes, but he's been expelled out of the country. Okay, we're going to correct that. But there's no way that we should be taking legalized citizens out of the country. But that's what this administration is arguing. That listen, we have the right to grab any citizen we want that disagrees with us. But anyway, if the Supreme Court, as you said, says, listen, DOJ, you need to bring back Mr. Garcia, and they don't comply, what's the next set of action?
Another great question. Your remedy in that instance, the court's got several things at the court's disposal. Number one would be contempt. They could hold an individual lawyer in contempt. They could hold some officials potentially in contempt. And this is where things get a little muddy. One, because the Supreme Court basically just told the lower district judge, you can't tell the executive how to do this. So the executive is in a perfect position to stonewall that lower judge. But that judge could say, okay, every 30 days, you're going to give me a report on where we are with getting this. And I better hear something more than nothing, because you are ordered to use good faith here. You are ordered to make some efforts. If that doesn't happen, there could be some contempt actions, but it gets muddy because the president can pardon you. If you are in criminal contempt, he can pardon you. Another thing that could possibly happen is that the federal courts say, okay, lawyer for the Department of Justice, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to bar you. You're not answering my questions. You have not been honest with me. I'm barring you from practicing in my court. And I'm going to report you to the state bar. That's something that Donald Trump can't pardon you for, and that's a real life consequence that Donald Trump's not going to be able to fix for you in his third term. So, so that may be something that gets at least the lawyers somewhat motivated to kind of get some answers here from the administration and try to get it pushed that way. Those are some of the things that I think you could see next if the administration takes an oppositional standpoint.
Yeah, it'll be interesting going forward. Jeremy, always fun to talk with you, sir. Appreciate your insight on this.
Jay, have a great day.
And by the way, when you're wrapping it up there, I guess we could just circle back to what we talked about last week, the constitutional crisis that we kind of visited on that. So we're kind of going round and round on it. But yeah, Jeremy, have a great weekend, pal.
You too. Bye-bye.